libraries. Thank you for being here today. I'm mainly here today representing the District Library Dynamos, which is a nonprofit, unincorporated nonprofit association here in the district.
Pardon me, Mr. Otten, do you have prepared written testimony?
I don't.
Okay. Would you mind if you even if you've written it out in longhand,
yes,
if you could give us a copy, because we can include it in our public record,
definitely,
so the other members who aren't here are going to have an opportunity to see your testimony.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Part of why I came today was to get some more information about the budget, so I could provide more detailed testimony.
Okay.
But today, it is about gathering more info and testifying to some critical things. One, starting with the libraries in the jail system. I think that's a no-brainer. Obviously, recidivism is a real issue in this city, and making sure there's educational opportunities, in DC's jail system is an important thing. We know how dreadful it is not to have educational opportunities. We had Benning, Anacostia, and the Shaw libraries closed for nearly 4 years under the current board chair reign back in the mid-2000s there, and those communities dreadfully needed those services and didn't have those for quite some time. So similar situation for a library in the jail system. But today I want to focus on MLK and the library budget. As you know, many letters from perplexed and maybe disappointed residents around the idea of mixed ownership and privatization of the air rights on top of MLK just doesn't sit well with many DC residents. And we know that the idea that luxury residential units and private ownership of the rights above MLK simply isn't practical in terms of meeting some of the financing needs. Although we did hear now that there's $220 million being allocated. What we need to understand is the source of those monies, because this idea of privatizing the air rights was developed largely by private consultants without longer-term impact analysis, such as what that might do to hindering public expansion to serve the needs of a growing city, and also without looking at other public partnerships that could be enacted there. Community college, integration, museum. There's a lot of opportunities outside of luxury residential units. And that gets us to the discussion, around this issue. Largely, like I was saying, mainly these ideas developed by private consultants now coming out into the public. We would like to see some of the budget dollars be spent on a real world-class citywide public engagement process. For example, some of the failures we've seen so far with the meet and greet that was announced about the architect last month. Ads were sent largely by email only, in fact, English only. No sense of how to engage with the architects, no sense of how the public was going to engage with them. There's a roundtable coming up at the end of this month on the 24th. I went into MLK Library on Saturday, and there's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper at the desk. Maybe you might see it, about one of the greatest projects, a very exciting project that's announcing this roundtable. So we'd like to see citywide, all demographics, all outreach, maybe design charrettes at every library around the city. Let's excite this whole city around this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Otten. Ms. Diner or Diener? Robin, I've heard it pronounced both ways, so I want you to definitively. It's Diener.
It's the way it's
the way
opposite of the way
German.
It's spelled.
No, it's the way it would be pronounced in German.
Precisely.
Right. Okay. Diener.
And Diener in German means steward. Anyway.
When you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Chairman and Council Member. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Robin Diener. I'm the president of the Martin Luther King Library Friends, and I'm also a member with Susan Haight of the advisory panel on the renovation of MLK. I first want to tackle the mystery of the capital budget, which I have found to be completely bewildering for many years now. Full public funding is needed for the renovation of DC Central Library as soon as possible. I've been involved for many years now in the history of calling. We've called for years for a task force to plan the Central Library, how we would afford it and what it would contain, what its programs would be, and perhaps other possible partnerships. And that has not been done. So here we are now. We've got architects, which is fantastic, and we're ready to roll, but now the money's being pushed off. I don't understand why that would have happened. I realize the budget comes from the mayor, but there's been no explanation of that from his office to me. If we are pushing it back in order to develop a public-private partnership, we would be very much against that. We're against it ideologically, but we also feel it would take too long, it would be divisive. There's no other central library in the world that has resorted to a public-private partnership like this. The library needs to maintain control of the project. Who knows what we'll get into with a private entity on top, even just in the building of the two things. The Martin Luther King Library is now landmarked, and building more than 3 stories would require demolition of the interior, which would create a massive problem vis-a-vis the landmarking guidelines that are in place for it, and the historic preservation review that is required is very time-consuming, and it would best be facilitated by staying within the historic guidelines of not more than 2 stories as originally intended by the architect and for which there are existing plans. Mr. Otten spoke to some possibilities for co-location. We agree with all of those. We also need a plan for private large donors. As you know, I'm also the executive director of the DC Library Renaissance Project. We would be very happy to help with fundraising in that regard. And as to the operating budget, we definitely need more money for collections. Libraries are, to a great extent, their collections, and which now increasingly are online and electronic. So it's not like it's an old world thing, books. The libraries are really ahead of the curve in technology. They're doing a fantastic job adapting to the changing world, much better than bookstores. As you know, I used to own a bookstore. The books in jail item is fantastic. You know, I used to be the director of the Washington Literacy Council, which trained volunteers. Our first largest source of referrals was from the Adult Literacy Resource Center, and the second largest was from the people who come out of jail. Yes, okay, well, that's good. I do have some answers to some questions you asked, though, so perhaps if you come back to me. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Jenner. Mr. Clark. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman. How are you?
Good morning.
Okay, I'm going to rearrange my testimony just a bit, but I just want to stay on point. First, I'm going to start with the area of the public library system. And is my mic? I think, okay. Yes, sir. Okay. I'm going to start with the area of the public library system. I personally observed the Sing, Talk, and Read program in our Ward 5 Woodbridge temporary facility. I think the $363,000 for the program that promotes children to explore reading at an early age is vital in today's early educational climate. So is the $193,000 allocation for the library services in the D.C. jail. For 2 decades, the U.S. Department of Justice statistics have shown that the chances of a person reoffending once released from